as bold as lions. As bold as lions.
As bold as lions.
As bold as lions.
You're listening to the As Bold as Lions podcast.
Well, good to have you join me for another episode of the As Bold as Lions podcast. My name is Derek, and hopefully this is a blessing and an encouragement for you over these next few minutes that we have together. I always kind of take that as a humble privilege to have anyone perhaps listen to something that I've prepared and have put out there. It's really just the work of the Lord to have the opportunity to do this, to have the technology and the means to record something and upload it and just have it go out and really from there not know who might stumble upon it. So I am just blessed that God uses the loaves and the fishes that we bring before him, and he multiplies it. So I am excited for a couple of reasons. We are just beginning the month of October, and typically as I was doing a blog every week for several years, and then this year cut back to just once a month, but had kind of shifted gears and taken this podcast to just kind of the weekly sort of offering that I do. But what I've done the last few years in October is just to hit that pause button and just to kind of say, for a month out of the year, I'm not going to put anything new up in terms of the blog, now in terms of the podcast, and just kind of just put it on autopilot for a few weeks. And so I do have a blog that is posting for this month, goes out to my mailing list. And then this podcast is tied into that of the same title, this Lessons from the Psalms that we're going to be talking about. And I guess that just something the Lord impressed on me a few years back is just to kind of hit that break, a point where we can just kind of have a little bit of a Selah moment, I guess, as we're thinking about Psalms, that we just rest. And I talk about that a fair amount in different ways, but I feel like I have to be doing that myself in order to really understand it and do that. And as much as I kind of want to keep moving ahead and say, well, we've got some momentum here, and how many people are listening to the podcast? Oh, well, September was a really good month, so I just should keep putting new episodes out there so we keep getting people to listen and keep this thing going. But I find that I have to step back and say that's in my own flesh, that's in my own power, and God, I don't want to do any of this without it being about you. And so even taking a break causes me to refocus and think about why I'm doing what it is that I'm doing for him. And so I was excited for a couple reasons. Well, that's one, is October is just kind of this break, this pause that I hit. And then it's also a time to kind of to focus in and just get the Lord's sort of his heartbeat for what personally he wants for me, for my family. How do I finish out 2022 well? Do the things with As Bold as Lions and my own music ministry, Derek Charles Johnson, things with that, kind of looking at all of that and doing some evaluating. Maybe it's a little early because we still have October, November, December, but I just find that almost even into December, things get so busy once again that I have to kind of figure out where to put that in before the holidays hit and before a lot of other commitments start to kind of take up my time again. So October has just been kind of this month to do that. My birthday's in October. So I kind of take that as another thing to just kind of say, God, thank you for another year of life. Thank you for the opportunity to be doing what I'm doing, my family, my wife, all these things. Just kind of celebrate him. So just putting all that at the front end of this episode, just so that if you are, maybe you don't listen through the whole thing or whatever, but you know, like in the weeks to come, why isn't there something new that's showing up on my feed, or getting any alerts about any new episodes or whatever? This is why. And I think I did this last year with the podcast as well. And I'm hoping to kind of go back and find some old content from what I've talked about this year or last year. And it's always helpful to hear from people too, like what were certain topics that resonated with you? What are some things that maybe you really enjoyed? Because I can kind of keep going down that path, or knowing that this was something that was beneficial. Way back in the beginning of the year, we started with James, and those were honestly some of my favorite episodes from this year. We've covered a lot of ground, a lot of different topics, but right now I'm in a sort of a men's study on James, and I'm finding myself just once again falling in love with that book, and finding so much truth there, and reminders of what the beginning of the year, as we were going through that, I think it was about 5 episodes because there's 5 chapters. But I would love to hear from you, love to get your thoughts, your feedback, even on this particular episode that we're going to be diving into, which is pretty broad in scope, trying to distill it down into something that we can take some bite-sized chunks and go away with something. I will say that what I've been studying the last month or 2, I guess 2 months, has been my daily reading quiet time in the book of Psalms. Sort of had this meandering journey through the Bible over the last 3 years. Got this new Bible, an English Standard Version. It's a type of Bible that just has these wide margins. You can do a lot of writing. I've been marking it up, highlighting, doing all this stuff. And so now I'm finally coming to the end of the 3 years that I've been going through this Bible, and considering where I go next. To get a new Bible? Do I just keep going back to this one that I've been used, that I can still mark up some more, or whatever? Figuring that out. But as I've been going through the Psalms, trying to finish out, stay on course for finishing this Bible reading plan out, the last 2 months have just been this just such a sweet time of reading God's word and being in some of these passages. And not all the Psalms are easy to read. They're not all easy to understand, but just the kind of more deliberate, slowed down pace of going through them, making notes, underlining, circling things. It's just been a refreshing thing for me to do. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that at the end of this podcast, just perhaps with just some directives that I feel led to give. But I want to open with Psalm 63, verses 3 and 4. It says, "Because your steadfast love is better than life, my lips will praise you. So I will bless you as long as I live. In your name, I will lift up my hands." Reading through the Psalms, they've just been, like I said, just such a feast of spiritual insight. Just so much so that I've felt like I've only kind of scratched the surface as I've gone through them in the last few weeks. And to have a podcast and a blog that say, here are some lessons from the Psalms, it almost seems too broad, because there's 150 of these passages, varying lengths, lots of different writers, lots of different things expressed. But I found myself thinking about what to blog and podcast about for this month of October. And I felt like the Psalms were just where I've been so much lately, and even throughout this year in some extent, that I needed to just share what I've personally come away with. And hopefully that's something that's helpful to someone that is listening to this. Or you say, I've been reading the Psalms and I'm picking some of these things up as well. Or, I've been drawing this theme or that theme. And, I've spent some time here already. We did a blog series on a few Psalms in particular, individual ones called the Summer of Psalms. Also did one, a couple months ago called Sleeping Well in the Fire, that being on an individual Psalm as well. And I guess the Lord just keeps bringing me back to some of these passages because he wants me to learn something and he wants me to grab a hold of something. And it seems like rather than looking at the Bible as just this huge book with all these different storylines and getting maybe a little bit confused or just overwhelmed by the volume of what's in there and the history and all that, it's just taking me to just individual things and just showing me this for this day. Like this is what you need for this moment just to hear, and tomorrow it'll be something else. And, just finding his presence through all of that, if that makes sense, just finding his love, just finding my own just satisfaction in him through some of these readings. And we're going to sample on a few of these today. And I think I could take another 2 months and go back in and start over, and there would be something else that he would impress upon me. And I've mentioned this so many times, but that's the cool thing about Scripture, is that it is active, it is breathing, it is alive. And every time you open this book up and start reading, there's something there that's going to come at you and something that you can apply to your life. And that's where maybe I would say, don't look at the Bible as always this checklist that you have to read through and kind of just get a certain point to all the time. I mean, it's helpful to have some guiding things to keep you moving through it, but take time to jot notes. Maybe you don't like to write in your Bible. That's fine. Have a notepad or something next to you and take notes and draw out things that speak to you. I think even more than having somebody teach us about the word, and I want to be careful on how I say this, but even a podcast like this or a sermon or whatever, there's so much to be said for our own discovery of the word for ourselves and being able to read it. And there's a lot of things that we may not understand, but there's so much more that we do understand and we do know, and we can take some direct application from as we look at it. So we're going to jump in with just a few points, which are basically these lessons from the Psalms that I've taken over these few weeks, kind of rapid fire succession. But I wanted to set all that up to say this is kind of where I'm going today, and not posting something for another few weeks. I hope this is also something that gives a lot of meat to somebody that says, I needed that. That's going to keep me going for a while now that I can go back and do some studying of my own. So considering the Psalms, considering what's in there, there's so many things we can take away. Here are some points that I believe God has been speaking to me as I've had this most recent course through this book. First of all, God watches over his own. In Psalm 40, verse 17, "As for me, I am poor and needy, but the Lord takes thought for me. You are my help and my deliverer. Do not delay, oh my God." So this major theme that I could not shake is just the simple truth, the simple fact that God takes care of us. He's watching over us at all times. And I've felt that, I've needed that so much in my life, especially over this last year. Just personal uncertainty in things, financial needs at times, questioning my own path in life and in ministry, especially. At times it's feeling either incapable or unworthy of leading my family, my home, my wife well, like feeling the weight of that as a man and as a dad and as a husband, of saying, I don't know what I'm doing here. And God, I need you to step in and help me. But as I read these passages and I read the Psalms, I find there's this reassurance that God is not going to neglect us. He's not going to abandon us. He even fights for us. He provides. He rushes in and sustains us. And in those moments when we are weak and we just have nothing, I find sometimes where I'm just brought back to that reality that I bring you nothing, Lord. Or like I talked about earlier, just the simple loaves and fishes that I may have, which are significantly of little value, but I bring them to you in hopes that you would bless them and use them. Psalm 46, 1-3, along these same lines. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble at its swelling. He's our refuge and our strength, a very present help in trouble. In this idea of refuge, rock, salvation, redeemer, kind of caught that right away as I was reading through the Psalms, because I saw it so much. And it's just all throughout these chapters. And I think it's there for a good reason. It's that we are to see God as inhabiting all of these things. He is this rock that we can build the foundation of our lives upon. When everything around us is shaking and crumbling, He remains. He's still there, and we can put our trust in Him. And again, we can know that He watches over us. The second thing I found that kept coming up various points throughout the Psalms: the wicked may prosper for a season, but their time is short. The wicked may prosper for a season, but their time is short. Psalm 64, 7 and 8. But God shoots His arrow at them. They are wounded suddenly. They are brought to ruin with their own tongues turned against them. All who see them will wag their heads. I love some of the wording in that. And it's kind of that, if I'm reading it, it's kind of like, yeah, God, go get them, sick them, kind of a thing as I'm reading it. But David, when I read through the Psalms and I see different things, themes and whatnot, the one thing that I think he does a lot, it's kind of this, maybe a literary device or something that he used, where he's contrasting the way of the wicked and the way of the righteous. Like, how this is how the wicked behave, this is how the righteous behave. And he's always kind of setting us up to see that and realize that there's definitely a difference there in character and actions and all these things. And in his range of emotions, we get the sense that he's frustrated at times, that the wicked and the evildoers are prospering, and often it's at expense of the righteous. Sometimes that's himself just saying, I'm trying to do what I should be doing or believe I'm doing as a righteous follower of the Lord, and God, would you step in and get these guys, because they're evil, they're doing bad stuff, they're doing stuff against me, and would you protect me and save me? And we can find ourselves feeling that way as well. Because as we look at our culture today, we're just seeing this progression and just kind of this tidal wave of what I would say is pagan thought, just wicked wickedness in general that's just creeping in everywhere. It's not really even creeping anymore. It's just right in front of our faces all the time. And the reminder that I have and the takeaway that I have in all this, and I express this in this episode, Sleeping Well in the Fire, is that the wicked, they don't prevail forever. They don't just, they don't win. In the end of the day, they don't, they're not the heroes of the story, I guess, to put it that way. They're not the good guys who get the girl or whatever you want to say. They're the ones that ultimately face judgment, and their ways will not prevail. And God has the ultimate say over these matters, that we would remind ourselves of that. In Philippians 2:10-11, it talks about every knee will bow, every tongue will confess that Jesus is Lord. And that's everyone, whether you followed him or not. So those that choose not to follow the Lord, that choose to do evil things, that just do things that we know are against his ways and his best for our world, and harm others as well. Those folks will still have to acknowledge that Jesus is Lord. They will still have to come to that recognition, and they will be punished for their sins. The righteous will earn an eternal reward in heaven. And so those are some truths that I've had to cling to as I've been angry at times. I've been just in my own flesh upset. I say my flesh because a lot of times we can have righteous anger, but I can also just have I'm upset at these people, and it's coming across out of my own heart and not anything really based in Christ. And I've allowed my anger to take me away from just trusting the Lord, being able to sleep well in the fire. Is, if you go back to that podcast episode, talking a lot about that, and then turning that into an acceptance and even a cherishing of God's plan, knowing that he's at work. He's got the world in his hands. He's still in control. He's still on the throne. And I need not fear. He has the final word over these things. And he is a just God. He's a righteous God. And that means I do not have to fall into despair, allow my mind to go to that place all the time. So moving along, we've talked about God watching over us, watching over his own. The wicked will only have a season of their prosperity or whatever that comes to an end. Third point is that our God is marked as a God of steadfast love. That phrase, steadfast love. Psalm 136:26. Give thanks to the God of heaven, for his steadfast love endures forever. So as I'm reading through the Psalms, and it probably took me over half the book to kind of see this. That's how long it takes me to get things sometimes. But as I'm getting nearer to the end, maybe Psalm 100 and beyond, I start just realizing that this phrase steadfast love is just all over this book. And so I start to underline it because I'm kind of big into what's being repeated throughout different passages and verses. Where's the repetition at? Sometimes seeing it more and more just makes me think, well, that's there for a very good reason, and I should pay attention to why. And I don't know if it was my own translation, because I read out of the ESV and I would see this and start to notice this a lot. In the NIV, I've noticed sometimes it chooses to interpret this or translate this as his love endures forever. So this idea of steadfast love, also seeing it phrased as his love enduring forever. But when I encountered it, I just realized the psalmist is driving a point home here about the love of God and about his character, that his love is steadfast. Had to do a quick little Google search of the word steadfast because I wanted to find out what does the word mean, or what are some synonyms of the word. And you get things like loyal, faithful, committed, devoted. And as we think about the love of God, we realize that it's a love that never gives up on us. And it's a love that goes beyond anything we would see in this life. The closest thing we can get to, I think, is a married relationship, husband and wife, man and woman. The closest bond that we can have with another person is that. And it's, intimate on every level. But even that is not as close as what this love is that God displays to us as a steadfast love. Our marriages should model that. We should be pointing to that. We should be extending steadfast love to each other. But it's perfectly modeled to us through the Lord, through Jesus. So I'm reading through and just seeing this phrase again and again, and I'm not sure in the ancient Hebrew how this looks and how it's translated to steadfast love and in some of our translations, or love that endures forever. But it's obvious to me that David, who wrote most of these Psalms, or a vast majority, he's experienced this himself. He knows that this is a God of steadfast love. He also lives among a people that have experienced it as well. If they've been, studiers, students of their own history, and also seen firsthand what God has done through the nation of Israel, through the people, he has extended steadfast love to them. And so thinking about that, stepping back from all that, evaluating why this is there and what it means, it was a reason for me to praise and to thank the Lord again, and just to realize, God, I don't deserve this love. I don't deserve how kind you are to me, but I'm in gratitude and in debt and in just awe of you extending that to us. And it's just amazing how one little phrase like that can just kind of grab our attention, and just to say, man, that's what I got out of reading the Psalms this time, was that our God is a God of steadfast love. Like that kept coming up, that kept popping up. And finally I was just like, okay, this is in here a lot. For one example, if you want to on your own time, read Psalm 136. And if you grab it in the ESV, you'll see it's in every line where it says something, and then it says his steadfast love. It's one of the verses that I quoted: give thanks to the God of heaven, for his steadfast love endures forever. There's that line about steadfast love in each verse. So pretty cool there. That was where it kind of just hit me over the head with the 2x4. It's like, this is in here a lot. So number 4, fourth point, it is okay to express emotions to the Lord, but in the end, we have to trust him. Psalm 31, 9 and 10, be gracious to me, O Lord, for I am in distress. My eyes wasted from grief, my soul and my body also. For my life is spent with sorrow and my years with sighing. My strength fails because of my iniquity and my bones waste away. This is probably one of the hardest lessons to kind of talk about, because there's some application here that we don't always want to hear. The Psalms are full of emotions expressed from these writers: happiness, sadness, grief, anger, fear. It just goes on and on. And I've heard different people teach on some of these things and just say, well, it's okay to express these things to the Lord because they're in the Psalms and they're a model for us, and we're to kind of give to the Lord what our heartfelt feelings are, to not hold things back. And I agree with that. I think, God can handle it, whatever it is that we bring before him. If you want to get in a shouting match with God, he's not going to love you less. He's not going to, somehow abandon you. And so we can express those things and know that it's okay. But I think what I've felt through the most recent reading of these Psalms, especially some of those ones where there's just a lot of despair. The one I just read from Psalm 31, 9 and 10, like he says, I'm in distress. He's talking about his body. He's got just hurts and pains and grief and sorrow. He has no strength. He's in the hurt bag. If we can kind of just chalk it up to that, on all levels. But what he has to do at the end of the day is to put all of that aside. And that's kind of the hard part, I think, is just to put that aside and to simply trust. And I'm not to say that that's, we just compartmentalize and we just ignore the feelings we have. But I think we have to come to a point where say, despite what I'm feeling, despite what I'm going through right now, I'm going to trust you, Lord. Our emotions are a representation of the response we have to some sort of experience we're going through. You have a battle with some sort of illness. You have a death of a loved one. Maybe there's a dispute with somebody in your life, kind of either an enemy you have, or maybe it's a friend or something that's come against you. But we cannot always trust that our emotions and the responses that we have are going to lead us into a place of truth. Let's say that again. We cannot always trust that our emotions are going to lead us into a place of truth. David always comes back to a place of truth, no matter what path he's taken through a psalm. I think I've noticed that a lot too. Like he will have these low moments, but he always kind of comes back to this is what is truth and this is what I will cling to. In Psalm 31, which I quoted there, he ends with these words. This is verse 24. Be strong and let your heart take courage, all you who wait for the Lord. He's saying, take courage, be strong, wait on the Lord. And those are words that just kind of cut through this myriad of thoughts that we may have in a certain situation, the emotional, the overwhelming things that we may be feeling, to just step aside and say, take courage, be strong, wait on the Lord. I'm learning that myself, like wait on him, be patient for him. He's still in control of this situation. Those are the landmarks we have to keep coming back to in our faith, that no matter where we kind of go and where the journey takes us, the situations we find ourselves in, that we keep coming back to those things that we can grab a hold of and say, this I know to be true. And we can still be honest before the Lord. We can still express our thoughts, our feelings to him. I think he desires that. I think that's part of the relationship, that he wants to know that we can trust him and come before him. But we should always allow those thoughts to bring us to a place of renewed trust and confidence in him. And I said that's one of the hardest things in my most recent study of this, is that is where I have to land, despite what I don't understand, despite what I'm wrestling through, is that I can give it over to him and say, God, I'm going to trust you with this situation. I'm going to put this in your hands. I'm not going to wrestle you with this to the point where it causes me to walk away from you. I want to follow you more closely. I want to trust you more deeply. Final point in this study, 5 things that I took away, lessons from the Psalms. Praise must mark my life. Psalm 84, 1 and 2. How lovely is your dwelling place, O Lord of hosts. My soul longs, yes, faints for the courts of the Lord. My heart and flesh sing for joy to the living God. So much could be said on the idea of praise, the model that we find throughout the Psalms. There's been a lot written on that. There's been a lot studied, and you could find books all over about just that aspect of the Psalms, the praise, the worship. They are songs in their most honest form. But praise isn't something that was just offered up when the psalmist was experiencing life at its fullest and everything was great and he was on the mountaintop. That was not the only time that these were written. Praise was brought forth at all times, and it was commanded as even an offering from the people. And again, that's not really an easy thing as well. I don't always feel like worshiping God, and I don't always feel like raising a song in my life, whether it's literally a song or metaphorically something that is singing and giving worship to Him through what I'm doing. But going back to that feeling aspect, it's not always about our feelings. Really, it's not at all about our feelings. It's about obedience, and it's about finding a place where we see God as holy and we see Him as worthy. He's worthy of our continual praise. And the Psalms speak of this so often that when I'm reading through them, it almost becomes second nature to think like, where in this Psalm is he going to start talking about praising and singing a new song and commanding people to praise and bring instruments? Because it's all over the place in these chapters. So why is it so important? It's because worship gives honor and glory to something bigger than ourselves. It helps us find a proper posture before the Lord. It keeps us humble, keeps us grateful. We realize praise isn't just a Sunday morning thing. It's a lifestyle. It's something that must mark us as Christians. Worship must become part of our identity as we are identified by Christ. I love this reminder, Psalm 92, verses 1 through 4. It is good to give thanks to the Lord, to sing praises to your name, O Most High, to declare your steadfast love in the morning and your faithfulness by night, to the music of the lute and the harp, to the melody of the lyre. For you, O Lord, have made me glad by your work. At the works of your hands I sing for joy. Just that attitude of worship that you find there. And just knowing He is good, and we must praise Him. So in closing, knowing that I've kind of discussed this a little bit already, but just reading over these chapters the last 2 months, I've felt like this is what I need to share in the hopes that it's going to encourage someone. The Lord knew that I needed some of these truths right now in my life, and He just does that again and again. When I start to neglect reading the Word, when I start to neglect that time in prayer, kind of that quiet time, I can do that for a while. I can try to do life on my own, but I lack that peace. I lack that joy. And life goes a lot better when I have the commitment to spend time with Him, and when I'm just sitting in His presence and He's speaking to me. And as I come upon 45 years of life, I've noticed this pattern again and again, that when I'm close to Him, doesn't always mean life's easy, doesn't mean everything just makes sense, but there's a peace through it. When I'm trying to do life on my own and fighting every day to do what I think I need to be doing, and I'm just kind of leaving His Word and His presence behind, I'm in turmoil. I'm unsettled. I'm trying to figure it out, but I just can't put the pieces together. And I wish more people would find that out and come to that reality, because when you do, that's a point where you just recognize your need and you come before the Lord and surrender. I know I need to do it on a very regular basis. So that kind of wanted to end with a charge through this passage, and going a little bit longer here with the podcast. Not going to have anything for a few weeks, so hopefully you'll forgive me and show me some grace in just ending this way and giving you a little bit more, perhaps some homework. And maybe this is a discipline that you're already doing, and if so, great. But I would just encourage you to somehow, and pray through this, but I think it's a pretty easy answer, is to read a psalm or to read a part of a psalm every day. Maybe it's just a couple verses, and that's all you read, and that's fine. But to take that on as a challenge and kind of, almost like a 30-day money back guarantee type of thing, even though there's no money being exchanged here, but to just say, I'm going to try that. I'm going to give that some time in my life every day. I'm going to give that some space in my day to go into the Word. Maybe I start chapter 1 and I just read that, or I just read a couple verses, or whatever. I just open the book and flip to something and just kind of do that Bible roulette kind of thing. But you go through and you find something and you read it. And then the next day you read something else. And you just allow that to settle into your spirit and ruminate over that a little bit. Mull that over. And just start to see how that changes your perspective on things. Start to see how your thought process changes, your feelings change. Start to see what kind of starts flowing out of you. What words are you saying more of or less of? Do other people notice anything different about you? Because I think it's going to have an effect. I can't see it not having an effect as we spend time. And yeah, we could go to anywhere in the Word and take that challenge and it would be good for us. But I'm impressed after going through the Psalms to kind of still keep a finger in that book and just say, God, this for some reason has really left a mark on me, and I'm wanting to go back to that well again and again and again and just be filled again. Whatever you have to show me here, God, I'll take it. And so I leave you that challenge as well, to say, try it for a while, try it for a few days, see what happens. Maybe you write some verses down on a note card and it's on your bathroom mirror, it's on the dash in your car, or it's on the microwave or the fridge or something like that. But you see some of those things every day, and they become things that you start to commit to memory and you go to. Whatever that looks like, I would love to hear from you if that's a challenge you're willing to take, because I just would like to pray for you in that and just say, hey, I'm with you. I'm all in with you on it. The best way to just let me know is my email, info@derekcharlesjohnson.com. And just say, keep going. It's done a work. This reading of the Psalms, I wouldn't put a podcast and a blog together just to talk about it if I hadn't felt like this has been super impactful for me and has given me almost like a fresh insight to my Christian faith that I didn't have a few weeks ago. And so, I don't know. I hope that comes through in my heart of what I'm trying to say and what this episode has been about. I hope it's something that makes sense to people as you go back and hear it. And I'm going to miss you guys. Going to miss you for the next few weeks. But again, I appreciate your prayers. I'm praying for those who would hear this, and would love to hear from you, just to connect and just to say, hey, keep going. That's what this is about. That's what As Bold as Lions has been for me. The burden of doing this that the Lord has given me has just been to say, I want to equip, I want to inspire, I want to encourage people in the faith. God, if you give me the opportunity to do it, I will do that to the best of my ability. And so thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of this. And come November, we'll have some new stuff to go through. I'm excited for that, and excited for what God continues to do through all of us as we keep living life bold for Him. Ephesians 5:15-17. You guys know it if you've been listening. Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. God bless you. Take care. We'll see you again soon. Hey guys, this is Derek Charles Johnson. You have been listening to the As Bold as Lions podcast. I am a blogger, a songwriter, an artist. And if you've been encouraged by this podcast, please go ahead and subscribe and share, and head over to derekcharlesjohnson.com for more encouraging content. God bless.